When one of America's most decorated generals says a strategy is not sustainable, you listen. General Jack Keane is not a commentator. He is not a pundit. He is the man who designed the Iraq surge, the strategy that, in 2007, reversed what most military analysts had written off as a losing war. He served as the Army's Vice Chief of Staff. He has been in rooms where the decisions that shaped the last 30 years of American military history were made. And this week, across multiple appearances and interviews, General Keane delivered a verdict on Iran's strategy that should be heard in every intelligence briefing room in Washington and in Tehran. His conclusion? Iran is not trying to make a deal. Iran is deliberately stalling, dragging out negotiations, bleeding the clock, betting that political and economic pressure will eventually force Trump into major concessions or into declaring victory and walking away. And the Iranian regime, Keane says, is willing to let its own people suffer to make that bet pay off. That is not sustainable. Those 4 words carry enormous weight when they come from this man, and tonight we are going to go through exactly what he means, and why, if he is right, the options on the table are far more dangerous than most people realize. Before we go through Keane's analysis, let's establish why his voice carries weight that most voices in this debate do not. Retired General Jack Keane is a 4-star Army general, the highest non-ceremonial rank in the U.S. military. He served as Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army, and briefly as its acting chief. He is widely credited with advocating for the 2007 Iraq surge, the decision that reversed the direction of a conflict most of Washington had already privately conceded. He has served on presidential advisory boards. He has testified before Congress repeatedly. And today, as a senior strategic analyst, he speaks directly to an audience that shapes political pressure in Washington. When Keane speaks about Iran, he is drawing on decades of watching how adversaries behave under pressure. And what he is saying is this: Iran is not negotiating. It is running out the clock, not the military clock, not the economic clock, the political clock, the one tied to U.S. elections, rising fuel prices, public opinion, and pressure on leadership. That is the clock Iran is betting on. And Keane says the bet is wrong, but proving it may come at a cost. Keane's first claim: Iran is not negotiating, it is stalling, dragging talks out, extending timelines, letting pressure build, not just inside Iran, but inside the United States. The logic is simple. If pressure builds long enough, Washington faces 2 options: make concessions or walk away. Either way, Iran survives without giving up its core leverage. Second claim: the regime will let its people suffer. Economic collapse, currency decline, inflation, job loss. Keane argues these are not breaking points for the regime. They are acceptable costs, because the system is not built on public approval. It is built on control. Third claim: the ceasefire changed the balance. Iran used the Strait of Hormuz as leverage, and it worked. The war paused, but control over the waterway shifted. That shift matters, because it gave Iran a position it did not have before, and according to Keane, that position is now being used to stretch negotiations, not resolve them. This leads to a critical risk. If Iran's strategy is delay, then every proposal is designed to avoid escalation, not reach agreement. Move just enough to keep talks alive, never enough to close a deal. A strategic stall. Now look at what that means in practice. Keane points to internal divisions inside Iran, but not as a weakness that leads to compromise. As a system where hardliners dominate outcomes, where agreements can be discussed, but not implemented, where military leadership can override political negotiation. That makes diplomacy fragile, because even if a deal is reached, enforcement is uncertain. And then there is the trust issue. Keane raises a point rarely said so directly. Verification is the real problem, not promises, not documents, but whether compliance can actually be guaranteed. History suggests that is not simple, which brings us to the most serious part of his assessment. Keane outlined what a second military phase could look like: fast, targeted, escalated, securing air dominance, disabling missile systems, addressing nuclear infrastructure. Not gradual pressure, but decisive action. And in his view, if diplomacy fails, that path becomes increasingly likely. Because the current situation, as he describes it, cannot hold indefinitely. The strategy, in his words, is not sustainable. Now step back and look at the global picture. If Keane is right, then the current phase is not progress. It is a pause, a gap between two escalations, and the next phase would be more intense than the first. That has consequences far beyond one country. Energy markets, trade routes, global stability, and inside Iran, already under pressure, the impact would multiply. But there is another side to consider. Keane's view is grounded in experience, but it is still a perspective. Iran has made moves in negotiations. Positions have shifted. Signals suggest that both sides may be searching for an exit, even if they cannot agree on terms, and the assumption that pressure alone cannot force change is not absolute. Internal pressure has challenged the system before. The question is whether it can again, and whether escalation changes the outcome or repeats the cycle. Because the first phase of conflict did not produce resolution, and there is no guarantee the second one will. So here is where we stand. A veteran general says the current path will not hold. That delay is strategy. That pressure will not break the system fast enough, and that the situation is heading toward a decision point. At the same time, diplomacy continues. Proposals are made, rejected, adjusted, and the space between negotiation and escalation is narrowing. The outcome is not locked, but the direction is becoming clearer, and the cost of getting it wrong is rising. Jack Keane has seen how conflicts evolve. He has seen how adversaries calculate time, pressure, and risk, and he has said clearly that what is happening now cannot continue indefinitely. The question is not just whether he is right. The question is what happens next if he is, and who decides when that moment has arrived. And the world is watching what happens next. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay sharp. Because these are the stories that shape what comes next.